And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Jon.
All right. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Yeah. So we published a release. I think it was what. Well, some days ago. My sense of time is completely shot these days. But there was a few small improvements there, some performance improvements. But the big thing was this new feature that basically comes out of a lot of conversations with, especially our most prolific users. We have some users. I think the biggest garden project we're aware of has something to the tune of 250 modules. So that's a fair amount of complexity. And just kind of looking at how they're doing things, we noticed that there's a fair amount of boilerplate in a single service may include 2, 3, 4 different modules in some cases, and that could be something like you have your container build, potentially more than one even. You might have Kubernetes manifest or a Helm chart. You might have some scripts that you need to run ahead of the build or post, and obviously, it's nice to be able to do that and operate at a fairly low level. But we wanted to come up with a way to abstract some of that away from developers, and also just to be able to factor out the boilerplate that's attached to each and one of your services. And another thing that kind of comes as a side effect of having this many different modules, if you want to make sweeping changes across a large project, that can become a little bit difficult. Say, if you have a bunch of different services and you have a Helm chart or some Kubernetes manifest next to each of them, what if you want to add, a sidecar to all of your services, like one particular thing that needs to be attached to everything? That becomes a little bit tedious if you need to then go into every single service and modify them accordingly. And I think we chose to use YAML for garden configuration because it's a familiar format, but and I personally think YAML is totally fine as long as there's a sensible amount of it. And in Kubernetes land, sometimes that the amount of YAML you're wrangling every day is not so sensible. So we wanted to do something to help along there. Next slide. Yeah, so I guess I've gotten into this a little bit already, but the idea is that, and I'll show you in a moment how this looks. The idea is that you can define a template that can generate out of just a short, whatever number of inputs you specify in a schema, generates one or more modules. It's especially useful if you have multiple modules, but even for a single module, maybe you only want to expose, a couple of different parameters for every individual service. And that could be what port it exposes, or what's the host name, what's the ingress path, something of the sort, or whatever variables you need for your individual services. There's a lot of flexibility in this, so we don't encode any sort of an opinion on what these variables should be. And the idea being that each service or each component in your project has really only a limited set of configuration parameters, makes it easier for developers to understand, makes it easier to reason about. But under the hood, it works the same way as Garden has worked before. I think it's best to just dive straight into a demo.
All right, I'll stop sharing my screen and let you take it.
Share screen. Here we go. Can you see this?
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah. Okay, great. So here's just like a blank terminal, but so I wanted to show the actual configuration for us. So what I have here is so one of our examples, and you can actually find this particular example that I'll use in the Garden core repo called templated K8s container. And what this example shows is how you can create a template for pretty typical pairing of Garden modules, which is a container module for building an image, and then some Kubernetes manifests that you attach to that. So here we have one directory here, which is just a module, and that contains a bit of code. And then you have a template. And this is usually like you're going to have like 2 or more files here. And how the template looks. So there's a new kind. So you might have noticed you have like in Garden projects, you have kind project, kind module, kind workflow. So this is a module template. I'm naming it Kate's container. I point to a path to a JSON schema that describes what inputs this template wants, and I'll get more into that a little bit later. And here are the modules that this template generates. As I mentioned, in this example, we have a container module. And these fields here, this is exactly what you would otherwise put in. So if you just have like a kind module, type container name, and so on and so forth. So any fields that are valid in a normal module configuration, you can put here. So we have a container module and a Kubernetes module that basically has some manifests that need that image that we're deploying. So I'll kind of go through these step by step. So notice first, the module name uses parent.name as a prefix. So parent in this case would be the module that references this template. And you can, and basically you kind of have to template the name. In this case, I chose, there's the module name image and module name dash manifest. So you have these two different modules. You need the templating because otherwise, if more than one module uses the same template, you will get a naming conflict. Perhaps one of the more interesting things here is you can generate files as part of a template. So it's not just that you're generating the module configuration for these modules, but you can, any file, you can take a templated source file. Here we have a manifest.yaml file. So this is your typical Kubernetes manifest, like super basic. There's a service and a deployment. But notice that we have Garden template strings in here. So basically, you can use normal Garden template strings. Here we also have the inputs templates. So that I'll show you actually what the module looks like, how you specify these. And this is what you feed into the template specifically when you're referencing it. And then you also have your normal, like here I'm referencing the other module in this template. You can notice maybe this is a bit of syntax you might not have noticed before. You can use the bracket notation, and you can do a nested template string here. So we're templating the name of the module and getting that out of the modules object that you have when you're rendering template strings for modules. And so, but this file, like here it's YAML. This could be a Docker file. This could be whatever configuration you want to bundle with your modules that you either want to template or you don't expect to change with every instance of your service. So how you use this template here is just about as simple as it gets. So there's a special module type called templated. You specify the name of the template. You give this module a name, and then you specify the inputs that the template expects. So here, we'll kind of go back to the JSON schema that we put in our template. So any JSON object schema, so just standard JSON schema, has to be of type object. And here we're asking the user to specify a container port, service port, and optionally number of replicas. This is pretty arbitrary. We just use something simple for the example. This could be any strings, any nested objects. Garden doesn't mind what you put in there exactly. But we figure it's kind of typical. You for a particular type of service, you want to specify the port that it's supposed to expose or where the service is running. But yeah, host names, ingress paths, even Boolean flags to control some behavior. That's all viable as well. Yeah, I mean, it is actually isn't much more complicated than this. So what happens under the hood? So if I now go and deploy this to our testing environment here, expand this a little bit. Sorry, let me do that again. This will basically just deploy this project, which will contain 2 modules. You see here, I have my service image, and that's the container image, and my service manifests. Perhaps one thing of note is that when I ran this, now this file here was generated. So this is the rendered manifest file. Here's that module image reference that I showed you earlier. The inputs have been put in here, so replicas and a container port. And yeah, so Garden doesn't mind like which type of file this is at all. You can template anything like this. We would just suggest that you whatever files that you generate, you put them in your git ignore so that you don't accidentally commit something, because obviously this, for example, this string is going to be different depending on when you run it. Like the module version is going to be different. So you don't want to commit this necessarily to your repository, but your workflows may vary, of course. Yeah, that's kind of the whole gist of it, like how it works. Maybe some more ideas on what you can do with this. So this is a pretty basic combination, like you build an image and then you have instead of having Garden generate your Kubernetes manifest for you, you provide your own Kubernetes manifest. This could obviously also be a Helm chart. You could even generate a Helm chart, or you can reference a Helm chart and just provide values to it. You could have an exec module in there where you run some build script, something before you build the container. We've been seeing people, for example, using Jib to build images. You could do that instead of having the container image build. Sometimes you need to prep something ahead of a build outside of a container. You could put in some other tasks, like you could have a conf test module in there. You could have some linting tasks. Really, whatever you can think of, you can put in there and abstract that from the end user. So the end user would only see something like this, and then this just exposes sub modules that just have you would give them these name suffixes or something of that effect. Yeah, I'm wondering, AC, this is something I should mention on top of this?
No, I think that that covers it pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one question that just sprung up in my mind as I was watching this, is there a reason, because I didn't review the PR, our colleague Thor did that, is there a reason we're syncing the generate files to the source directory as opposed to the .garden/build directory, like we sometimes do in the past, just out of curiosity?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
There is a reason. Yeah, sure. Basically, yeah, we put it in the source directory. And there's a few reasons for that. I weighed this myself a little bit. One thing is it's quite common that you would actually need that as part of a build context. So before you want it to be in here before the container module is actually synchronized and to the build staging. So if you, for example, generating a file that, so yeah, I think it's a bigger source of confusion if the file only gets generated in the build staging. I felt it was less intuitive, and I could at the time think of some cases where that could be problematic. for one, it's nice to just be able to see, next to the module directly, here's what I'm going to be building, and not have to dig in here. Although you obviously could, but this doesn't strike me as a particularly convenient way of going about things. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes total sense.
Yeah, I wanted the path of least confusion for this. That's I tried. I heard a little clicking sound. Was there another question there?
Yes.
Actually, yeah, a question came in about module templates. So someone wrote, my modules rarely have the same amount of something such as ports. Does templating support complex objects or iteration?
Oh, sorry. Can you repeat that?
Let me read it more slowly. So my modules rarely have the same amount of something such as ports. Does templating support complex objects or iteration?
So yes, to some degree. So I think if you're doing like very complicated templating for like Kubernetes manifest, for example, you might want to use Helm for it, because that gives you like the full like Go templating syntax, and you can do all kinds of if statements and or multi-line stuff. That said, the strings here are actually you can, there is nothing to say that Garden isn't aware that this is a YAML file. So you have a fair amount of flexibility in terms of what you template in. But yeah, I would maybe say if you're like toggling different manifests on and off, we haven't yet gotten our template syntax to the point where we could have like multi-line blocks and functions and the kind of all the, I like to say like Helm is flexible to a fault sometimes, but it is also very flexible. So you might want to use this in combination with, so basically generating Helm charts that then you can do all kinds of complex, you can, drop in, different numbers of containers or ports, or toggle individual documents like YAML resources on and off. For now, that would probably be your best bet.